Hey there. Have you heard the one about the frog? There was a frog that was scooped up from its pond with a little bit of its water that it was used to. It was put into a pot on a stove, and the water in that pot was the same temperature as the water from the pond. Very slowly, they increased the heat of the burner on the stove, which very slowly increased the heat of the water that the frog was in. Without even a lid on top, they were able to boil the frog to death because it had adapted to its surroundings. Welcome to the Daphne V TV show, where today we are talking about adapting and the dangers of doing so. I hope you are doing well today. And I know that's a little bit of a morbid way to start today's show. It makes a really good point, however. When we allow our outside circumstances to affect us without questioning them, without checking the facts, without seeking truth, we can wind up like a boiled dead frog. And at the same time, we can avoid that fate. So what I want to talk to you today about is adapting. Now, adapting is different than adopting. Adopting is something that is intentional. It takes time. Usually there are legal contracts involved. Think about one of my sisters used to be in curriculum and textbooks, and she would go to school systems and they would adopt new textbooks. Trust me, it was an arduous process. Or think about adopting a child. That takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And once someone is adopted, be it into a family, like a next door neighbor, a normal family like you and I have, or as the daughter or son of the king. Once that adoption has taken place, it can't be undone. It's there forever. However, adapting is something different. Adapting is when we gradually and slowly make changes in our lives. So let me give you a couple of concepts about adapting. Adapting can be scary and hard, or it can be exciting and freeing. It depends upon what you are choosing to adapt to. Maybe it's a new lifestyle. Maybe it's a new habit. When we adapt, just like that frog, it's a slow process. It's a little bit here and a little bit there until we start to change directions a bit. We are adapting to the environment. Like if you've ever lived in the north and moved down to the south, or vice versa, we talk about how our blood thickens or it thins, depending upon which way you're moving. That's adapting. That is your body adapting to the external circumstances. Now, when we adapt, we can be proactive or we can be reactive. There are two different ways to approach adapting: proactive or reactive. So let's use my example of moving. Because I live in the South, if I was going to move to the North, if I was going to be proactive, as the temperature started to change outside, I would start to slowly expose myself to those cooler temperatures. Instead of bundling up like Nanook of the North, every time I left the house, I would try a light jacket, or maybe even start with long sleeves and get used to the cooler temperatures. Then gradually, as the temperatures dropped, the clothing would become a little bit heavier and I would be adapting to my surroundings. That would be proactive. Reactive would be going outside inappropriately dressed, running back inside, putting on every layer I could possibly put on while still being able to move about freely or at least only a little restricted, and then facing the weather. Does that make sense? I want to hear from some of you who are watching today. When it comes to adapting, do you tend to be proactive or reactive? Adapting is honestly another word for change. And we've talked about before how change isn't necessarily something people always look forward to. It is a part of life. And we can approach change just like we approach adapting and vice versa. We can be proactive or we can be reactive. A lot of it goes to our mindset. And it's been said before that the more intelligent you are, okay, I'm not the one who said this, I'm quoting somebody else. The more intelligent that you are, the more easily you adapt. And that's because you're willing to stretch your thinking. You're willing to stretch your mind. Now, in that process, you have to know your truth. You have to stay anchored in what you believe in so you don't wind up like that boiled dead frog I talked about at the beginning of the show. But adapting can be approached from either the proactive or the reactive. You can either open your mind to say, okay, here's a new situation, here's a new opportunity. How can I adapt my core beliefs to allow part of this into my life? And that starts with knowing what your core beliefs are, what your values are. Now, I want to give you 3 ways to approach adapting. Are you ready? First one, ask questions. If you are going to lead some new lifestyle or a change, if you're going to adapt to something by your own initiative, I want you to do your homework. I want you to ask questions. I want you to think about it, weigh the pros and cons, if you will. If someone else is initiating the adaptation, still ask questions. So the first thing is ask questions. What questions do you have? Asking why is perfectly acceptable. In fact, it helps other people understand if they have to explain, okay? The second question, or the second step, so asking questions is the first. The second is seek truth, which today with social media, good and bad thing, right? We all have a love-hate relationship with it. Seek truth. What is the truth in what is being adapted? Either what is being proposed that you adapt or what you are choosing to adapt. Where's the truth? Okay. One of the resources I always use, is my favorite book, the Bible, and it is relevant today as much as it ever has been or will be. What does it have to say about an issue? What do reliable, credible sources have to say? Are you finding the same information in 3 to 5 sources from sources that you trust in? So ask questions, seek truth, and finally, the number 3 point, tip, or opportunity with adapting is check facts. How many of you remember Dragnet? And I'm not talking about the movie with Dan Aykroyd. I'm talking about the old school TV show where Joe Friday would say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Again, one of the things with social media today is there's a lot of fiction out there being presented as fact. So check the facts, ask questions, seek truth, check the facts. As you begin to adapt, because adaptation, like change, it's part of growth. If we are going to truly fulfill the lives that we have been designed to fulfill, that we have been called and created for, we're going to have to adapt. We can't be the person we're supposed to be by being the person we are today. It's about becoming, which means we're going to have to be adapting. So you want to ask questions. You want to seek truth. You want to check the facts. And when you do that, you are able to author your life. By doing so, you're going to be breaking change and you're going to be making waves. People prefer sheep, people who just nod and go along with it. You, my friend, you, the one watching this video all the way to the end, you are a lion. You are someone who was designed to speak up and speak out. Know your truth. It does not matter if everyone agrees with you or not. That's also from my favorite book. I believe it's Galatians 1:10. Of course, I'm not here to please everybody. And no, you're not here to please everyone. You are here to live a life and fulfill a purpose that only you were created to do. So in that process, you're going to need to adapt. There are going to be situations that, let's face it, we don't always get our way. Things don't always go as we planned. So how do we adapt? Or to use some very contemporary vernacular that has been made popular over the last 18 months is pivot. When we have to pivot, how are we going to do that? Do it by asking questions. Do it by seeking truth. Do it by checking facts. And as you do so, you have permission to speak your mind.